Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Reading from Shri Chaitanya Charitamrita Adi Leela, chapter number 2, Lord Chaitanya, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Text number 15. Koti koti brahmande ye brahmera vibhuti se brahma govindera haya anga kanti. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. Lord Brahma said, the opulences of the impersonal Brahman spread throughout the millions and millions of universes. That Brahman is but the bodily effulgence of Govinda. Text number 16. Say Govinda bhajiyami te hon morapati tanahara prasade mora haya shrishti shakti. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. I worship Govinda, he is my Lord. Only by his grace am I empowered to create the universe. Purport. Although the sun is situated far away from the other planets, its rays sustain and maintain them all. Indeed, the sun diffuses its heat and light all over the universe. Similarly, the Supreme Sun, Govinda, diffuses his heat and light everywhere in the form of his different potencies. The sun's heat and light are non different from the sun. In the same way, the unlimited potencies of Govinda are non different from Govinda himself. Therefore, the all-pervasive Brahman is the all-pervasive Govinda. The Bhagavad Gita chapter 14 verse 27 clearly mentions that the impersonal Brahman is dependent upon Govinda. That is the real conception of absolute knowledge. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So welcome all of you to today's Chaitanya Charitamrita class. And as we saw in verse number 15, again there is talk about the impersonal Brahman. We have seen that we've been hearing about Brahman, Paramatma and Bhagwan, the three aspects of the Supreme Lord, since quite a few verses. And here again, it is being stressed that the opulences of the impersonal Brahman spread throughout the millions and millions of universes. That Brahman is but the bodily effulgence of Govinda. So, as we learned even in Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna explains to Arjuna that there is no need for electricity, sunlight, moonlight, or anything in Goloka Vrindavan, because everything is illuminated by the effulgence of the Supreme Lord. Excuse me. So here also in this chapter, we will see, as we've also seen before, that there is no difference between Krishna and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. That we have to remember. So when Lord Brahma is talking about the impersonal Brahma Jyoti, we can understand that it is the same, whether it is Brahma Jyoti coming from Krishna or from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, because they are non-different, they are the same. And in the verse number 16 that we read, a very important point, that he is my Lord. Only by his grace am I empowered to create the universe. So Brahma is saying he cannot do the creation on his own. He needs the grace, the mercy of the Supreme Lord. Only then he becomes empowered. Similarly, we should understand that when a disciple is trying to preach, is trying to distribute the knowledge of Krishna consciousness, of Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita, you must understand that empowerment comes from the spiritual master. Krishna says, I am Paramatma within and spiritual master without. So the bona fide spiritual master is one who gives the empowerment. So here Krishna has given the grace, the mercy, the empowerment to Lord Brahma to start the creation. So it's important, first of all, to understand that Krishna's will has to be there, his sanction has to be there, then his grace will be there, then only one is able to. Now, we may think that I am the one who is speaking, I have that ability to speak. No. In Bhagavad Gita, we learned that all the abilities that we have, they all come from Krishna. Any moment, this ability can be taken away. Like, a person may go blind, a person may go deaf. I had some issue with the heater in the house, and I had called the guy to come and check it out. And while I was talking, and he was just looking at me, so then he said, "I cannot hear." And I'm like, "If you cannot hear, how can you understand what I'm trying to tell you? Do I have to write and give you?" So you see that ability to hear is given by Krishna and taken away by Krishna. So that is very important to understand. And in the purport of verse 16, Srila Prabhupada gives nice analogy about the sun. He says, just like the sun is situated far away in one place, but it is diffusing the light and heat all over, right? So similarly, Krishna is there in Goloka Vrindavan, but he's diffusing through his potencies, right? So just like there is no difference between the sun and the sunlight, similarly, there's no difference between Krishna and his potencies. They are all the same. There is no difference at all. Let's see what is there in verse number 17. मुनयो वातवासनाः श्रमणा ऊर्ध्वमन्थिनः ब्रह्माख्यं धाम ते यान्ति शान्तः सन्यासिनो अमलः. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. Naked saints and sannyasis who undergo severe physical penances, who can raise the semen to the brain, and who are completely equipoised in Brahman, can live in the realm known as Brahmaloka. Purport. In this verse from Srimad Bhagavatam, 11th canto, chapter 6, verse 47, Vata Vasanaha refers to mendicants who do not care about anything material, do not cover their bodies even in severe winter or scorching sunshine. They take great pains not to avoid any kind of bodily suffering, and they live by begging from door to door. They never discharge their semen either knowingly or unknowingly. By such celibacy, they are able to raise the semen to the brain. Thus, they become most intelligent and develop very sharp memories. Their minds are never disturbed or diverted from contemplation on the absolute truth, nor are they ever contaminated by desire for material enjoyment. By practicing austerities under strict discipline, such mendicants attain a neutral state transcendental to the modes of nature and merge into the impersonal Brahman. This is not only an important verse, but it is also a very, what you can call a powerful purport by Srila Prabhupada. So it's, we can learn a lot from this. First of all, this verse is telling us who can live in Brahma Loka, the qualifications required for living in Brahmaloka or being elevated to Brahmaloka. This is what it says. So what is that? Naked saints and sannyasis who undergo severe physical penances and who can raise their semen to the brain, who are completely equipoised, they can live in Brahmaloka. Now we all have heard from Bhagavad Gita that Brahmaloka is a material planet. It is not a spiritual planet, which means when the living entity goes into any of the material planets, they have to come back again. Only when one reaches a spiritual planet, that is when there is no return back into the material world. Like in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Brahma bhuvana loka punar avartino Arjuna. See, even if one reaches Brahmaloka, Punar, you have to come back into the material world. So, what is Prabhupada talking about? He's giving more information about these saints and sannyasis, or they are also called mendicants, that they are not on the bodily platform. And that is the first lesson of Bhagavad Gita, that I am not this body. So these saints and these sannyasis, they have realized that they are not these bodies, they are not on the bodily platform at all. So that's why it doesn't matter to them whether they are wearing clothes or they are not wearing clothes. They can perform austerities even if they are naked. That is what purport says, right? It doesn't matter whether it is severe winter, whether it's scorching heat, there's a lot of sunshine. In fact, in India, we will find these yogis who perform these severe austerities, and they are practically naked. And what do? They will submerge themselves in ice cold water in the winter season, and or sit in the scorching sunlight, just performing austerities. It doesn't matter to them what the temperature is. And Prabhupada says they do not mind taking pains. Now, we mind taking pains? Yes, we do. We don't want anyone come hit us and you know harm our body, and it's very painful or whatever it is. We don't, right? But these saints and sannyasis, they do not mind suffering. And how do they live? They live by begging, which means they don't have a home to stay, they don't have any material attachments, no possessions, they don't have to go to a job, no car, no house, nothing. How do they survive? They go from door to door begging for some alms, and they live off of that. They are completely detached, no material possessions at all. Now we are living actually in the material world, and we have to have roof over our head. We have to have a job so that we can pay our bills. We have a family to take care of. Like in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that, Arjuna, perform your prescribed duty, because you have to maintain your body and soul together. And that is what he told Arjuna also. He didn't tell Arjuna, become a mendicant, go to the Himalayas and you meditate. No, he told him, your excuse me, your prescribed duty is to fight this war in this battle of Kurukshetra, and that is what you need to do. But you just need to change your consciousness. Now, very important point in this verse and purport is about do not discharge semen. Celibacy is very, very, very important in all ashramas. It's not just for brahmacharis that they, maintain celibacy till they get married, or in only in vanaprastha or in sannyas ashram. No, it is mandatory in all ashramas, even in grahastha ashrama. Just because a person is in grahastha ashrama does not get a license to engage in sex. This is the important part. What does Prabhupada explain to us in his purpose? What does the Bhagavad Gita teach? What does the Srimad Bhagavatam teach? It teaches us to perform austerity, and it teaches us that sex life is only for begetting Krishna conscious children. If one indulges in sex without the without the without deciding, that, oh, I want a child, and there is no desire to have another child, and if one still engages in sex life, then that is considered illicit sex. So from this we can understand that these saints and sannyasis, they preserved their semen, and that they were able to raise it to their brain. And what was the result of that? They became most intelligent and developed very sharp memories. You know what Srila Prabhupada told in one of his purports, and even one of his lectures? He said, 40 drops of blood from the body are equal to 1 drop of semen. So that means if 1 drop of semen is discharged, 40 drops of blood from the body are completely lost just for a few minutes of sense gratification. So these saints, they know, these sannyasis, they know that this, it is very, very important to progress spiritually. They are most intelligent, sharp memories, their minds are not disturbed, and there is no contamination at all. See, important. Why? Because they have no desire for sense gratification. All of us in our lives, we have watched movies. So many movies we have watched. And why is it that people, after watching so many movies, they still have a desire to watch some more movies? Why? Because they were not satisfied. That is what this material world is. There is no satisfaction in this material world. We may try and try. What does Prahlad Maharaj say? Chewing the chewed. Something that has been already chewed, all the juice is gone, and that is thrown in the trash. We pick that up from the trash and try to chew, hoping we'll get 1 drop of juice. That is the situation in this material world. We are trying hard to chew the chewed, but we should understand that there is no juice in this material world. Now, one may say, that is, you are being very pessimistic. No, this is what the scriptures tell. This is what Prahlad Maharaj, who was only 5 years old, who got this knowledge, spiritual knowledge from Narad Muni while he was in the womb of his mother. He understood, and he then explained to us in Srimad Bhagavatam what is the purpose of human life. It is not meant for sense gratification. Even the animals engage in sense gratification. Then, if we just do what the animals are doing, eat, sleep, mate, and defend, and nothing else, then what is the difference? There is no difference between animals and us. The intelligence has been given to us to use it in Krishna consciousness. That is the purpose. And in the purport, Srila Prabhupada is talking about austerities. These saints and sannyasis, they perform austerities. In the Bhagavad Gita 17th chapter, we learn about austerities of mind, body, speech. Right? Austerities are necessary. Disciple, what does disciple mean? Discipline. Discipline is very, very, very important. If we are not disciplined in our life, even in our material life, if we are not disciplined in even in our jobs, our boss can fire us and say, you're not doing what you're supposed to do. So discipline is very, very important. So discipline means following the process very strictly. That is what it means, strictly. If not, we will remain in Maya. If we don't follow the process strictly, then the Maya is going to attract us, and then we will get entangled in Maya, and then we will know how to come out of that entanglement of Maya. Talking about, Prabhupada says that we should, of course, he told some of his devotees that y'all are not afraid of Maya enough. That means you're taking it so casually. Bhakti is not casual at all. Bhagavad Gita is not casual at all. We have to learn these scriptures and become serious. We must learn from these scriptures how to trick Maya. We must learn that. Once I had heard the story. I mean, don't take it literally, but this is just to get the moral out of the story. There was this villager, he was going through the forest, and there he saw that there was a cage, and in that cage was a tiger, and the cage was locked. I mean, what do you call, bolted, or whatever you call it. So the tiger stopped the man and said, oh, you're such a nice gentleman. Look at you. You look to be very bright and intelligent. I can see from your face. I think you are saintly also. So this villager got puffed up. Oh, no one has given me so many praises in one day, that I'm intelligent, I'm looking sharp, and, I look saintly and I look spiritual. So a conversation started between the tiger and this villager. See, this is how Maya traps us. If someone is praising us, a red flag should stand up. A red flag, right? We should not think, oh, yeah, yeah, that person is talking so, oh yes, so honest. This person knows me so well. This person can understand I'm intelligent, I'm smart. No, no, no. So when this conversation was going on, the tiger said, look, I am different from other tigers. I'm not like all the tigers. They are all, very, what you call, they are mean, and, they pounce on people, they eat people. That is so wrong. Very, very wrong. I am not that kind. I'm like you. Just like you are spiritual, I'm also Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. That is what I believe in. So the villager says, so how did you get inside here? He said, some envious people, they just put me in here. They thought I'm going to eat them. Why would I eat them? I'm saintly. Oh, the villager said, you don't eat people. He said, no, no, I gave that up long time ago. So if you take me out, I'll just go, to my family, and I'll preach to them also, that they should also become saintly. So the villagers started thinking, this is a good opportunity to preach, right? This one has an opportunity to preach. So he opened the cage, and the tiger came out, and guess what he wanted to do? He wanted to eat this villager. The villager said, hold on, what are you doing? You just promised me that you're not going to eat me. He said, haven't you read Bhagavad Gita? Beings follow nature. My nature is to eat. Why would I not follow my own nature? Tell me. He said, no, no, this is cheating. So at that time, the actual saintly person was walking by. And he said, what is this commotion? Why are you two fighting? So this villager said, look, he promised me he's not going to eat. And the tiger said, no, I didn't promise. And they started arguing. So the saintly person said, stop. Both of you, stop. It is very confusing. I cannot understand what's going on. Now you demonstrate to me what exactly happened, and then I will be able to give a solution to both of you. So the villager said, okay, yeah, tiger, go inside. Let's close. Let's bolt this. Now let us start the whole scene once again. Like I will start walking from here, and then we will start a conversation. The saintly man said, job is done. He's back in the cage. It's bolted, right? This is how the saintly man tricked the tiger. Villager could not do that on his own, was dumb. Opened the cage and thought tiger is not going to eat. No. We may think Maya is not going to catch us. No, Maya cannot trick us. No. But the wise man, the saintly man, the spiritual master knows. He teaches us how to trick Maya, how not to allow Maya to somehow or the other become heavy on us, and we get more and more entangled. So here in the purport, what is even in the verse and the purport, it is mentioned what happens to such mendicants. They merge into the impersonal Brahman. Now Srila Prabhupada has taught us, even in Bhagavad Gita, that devotees are not interested in merging into the effulgence of the Supreme Lord. We are individual souls. Krishna is a supreme soul, individual. We are individuals. We do not merge. We always maintain our individuality. That is why it is recommended Brahman realization, merging into impersonal Brahman, is the lowest stage of understanding the Lord. The next stage is the Paramatma realization, where the yogis, they meditate and then they realize the Supreme Lord within the heart as Paramatma. But the highest level of understanding is Bhagavan realization. Bhaga means opulences, Van means possessor of these opulences. The six opulences that Krishna possesses in full. That is why he's called Supreme Personality of Godhead, Bhagavan. So this is what the goal of the mendicants is. Let's see what does verse number 18 say. Atmanantaryami yanre yoga shastrikaya seha govindere sha vibhuti yehaya. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. He who is described in the Yoga Shastras as the indwelling supersoul, Atma, Antaryami, is also a plenary portion of Govinda's personal expansion. Purport. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is by nature joyful. His enjoyments or pastimes are completely transcendental. He is in the fourth dimension of existence, for although the material world is measured by the limitations of length, breadth, and height, the Supreme Lord is completely unlimited in his body, form, and existence. He is not personally attached to any of the affairs within the material cosmos. The material world is created by the expansion of his Purusha avatars, who direct the aggregate material energy and all the conditioned souls. By understanding the three expansions of the Purusha, a living entity can transcend the position of knowing only the 24 elements of the material world. One of the expansions of Mahavishnu is Kshirodakshai Vishnu, the supersoul within every living entity. As the supersoul of the total aggregate of living entities, or the second Purusha, he is known as Garbhodakshai Vishnu. As the creator or original cause of innumerable universes, or the first Purusha, who is lying on the causal ocean, he is called Mahavishnu. The three Purushas direct the affairs of the material world. The authorized scriptures direct the individual souls to revive their relationship with the supersoul. Indeed, the system of yoga is a process of transcending the influence of the material elements by establishing a connection with the Purusha known as Paramatma. One who has thoroughly studied the intricacies of creation can know very easily that this Paramatma is a plenary portion of the Supreme Being, Sri Krishna. So here we can see, there's a repetition in the sense something that we've already learned in the Bhagavad Gita, right? That Krishna enters into each living entity's heart as the supersoul, as the Paramatma. And in Srimad Bhagavatam, which we concluded, we learned about, the expansion, which is Mahavishnu, also known as Karnodakshay Vishnu, from whose pores millions and millions of universes come out. And then in each of the universe, this Mahavishnu again comes out as Garbhodakshai Vishnu in each universe, and from whose navel a lotus flower comes out and Lord Brahma appears. That is the birthplace of Lord Brahma. And then again, then there is the next Purusha expansion, which is the Kshirodakshai Vishnu, which is actually the Paramatma, the super soul, which enters into the hearts of every living entity. Now, in the purport, Srila Prabhupada says, it is not, one cannot really understand Krishna fully. Why? Because his pastimes are unlimited. So if something is unlimited, how can we understand, right? Say, supposing Krishna has 100 pastimes. We learn that, then we know, okay, we know Krishna fully. But if his pastimes are unlimited, how can we completely understand Krishna? He's always joyful and he has a Satchidananda Vigraha, right? His form is Sat, Chit, and Ananda, right? He's unlimited, unlimited pastime. So it is not possible for anyone to understand Krishna fully. So now, even though he does everything, we learn this in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna does everything, with the help of Brahma and all creation, everything he does, but he still stays aloof. He's not affected by anything. So similarly, his avatars, his Purusha avatars, what do? They create, they maintain, and they annihilate. That is their duty to do. So now that we learned that, of course, we've already learned that Krishna is there in the heart as Paramatma. Why is he there? Is it because he's very nosy? He's very inquisitive. He wants to know what's going on in every living entity's mind, heart, or whatever. No. He is there because he is our seed giving father, right? Sarva Yonishu Kanteya in Bhagavad Gita. Aham Bija Pradaha Pita. Krishna says, I am the seed giving father of all living entities. All means all, whether they are in the air, on earth, in the water, it doesn't matter. Animal, human, insects, he is present in every living entity's heart, right? Why? Because he is He loves us and he is concerned about us. We, foolish souls, are just going through this cycle of birth, disease, old age, death again and again, taking so many different bodies. Millions of births we have already passed, and we have, most of us, most people in this world don't have a plan to break this material cycle and go to the spiritual world. That goal is not there, that ultimate goal. So Krishna is there in the heart to guide us, to give us knowledge. As soon as a sincere soul wants to understand, who am I? Why am I here? Why am I suffering? Where should I go where there is permanent happiness? Immediately Krishna will come to help, because he is there in the heart. He is there not only to witness our activities, to guide us, he also is there to sanction our desires, right? So many desires, but the main purpose is he wants to bring us back. He wants us to become conscious of him. So much we become conscious of him that he becomes conscious of us. So that is his purpose, to bring us back to the spiritual world. Now we have forgotten, right? We've forgotten. None of us, I'm pretty sure none of us remember who we were in the previous life. We in fact don't even remember what we did maybe a month ago on Monday morning. Of course, besides, shower or breakfast or whatever. No, not talking about that, but something specific. We don't remember. I don't even remember what I ate a few days ago. So, how can we remember, right? But Krishna says that if we have the sincere desire, he will give the remembrance. Not, of course, to remember what I ate, but to remember him, right? He can help us to revive our lost relationship with him, that connection. What is the meaning of yoga? Means to connect. So this bhakti yoga is to connect with Supreme Lord through bhakti, through devotional service. So Prabhupada has given us a very simple process. Just chant, hear, eat prasadam, distribute the knowledge, associate with devotees, and worship the deities. Nothing much, nothing more. It's very, very simple. So, if somehow the other we become serious in following this simple process, then we will be able to connect with the Supreme Lord. Let's read the last verse for today, number 19. अनंतस्पति के यचे एक सूर्य भासे तैचे जीवे गोविंदेरा अंश प्रकाशे. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. As the one sun appears reflected in countless jewels, so Govinda manifests himself as the Paramatma in the hearts of all living beings. Purport. The sun is situated in a specific location but is reflected in countless jewels and appears in innumerable localized aspects. Similarly, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, although eternally present in his transcendental abode Goloka Vrindavan, is reflected in everyone's heart as the Supersoul. In the Upanishads, it is said that the Jiva or living entity and the Paramatma or Supersoul are like two birds sitting in the same tree. The supersoul engages the living being in executing fruitive work as a result of his deeds in the past, but the Paramatma has nothing to do with such engagements. As soon as the living being ceases to act in terms of fruitive work and takes to the service of the Lord or the Paramatma, coming to know of his supremacy, he is immediately freed from all designations, and in that pure state he enters the kingdom of God known as Vaikuntha. The Paramatma or Super Soul, the guide of the individual living beings, does not take part in fulfilling the desires of the living beings, but he arranges for their fulfillment by material nature. As soon as an individual soul becomes conscious of his eternal relationship with the Super Soul and looks only toward him, he at once becomes free from the entanglements of material enjoyment. Christian philosophers who do not believe in the law of karma put forward the argument that it is absurd to say one must accept the results of past deeds of which he has no consciousness. A criminal is first reminded of his misdeeds by witnesses in a law court, and then he is punished. If death is complete forgetfulness, why should a person be punished for his past misdeeds? The conception of the Paramatma is an invincible answer to these fallacious arguments. The Paramatma is the witness of the past activities of the individual living being. A man may not remember what he has done in his childhood, but his father, who has seen him grow through different stages of development, certainly remembers. Similarly, the living being undergoes many changes of body through many lives, but the supersoul is always with him and remembers all his activities despite his evolution through different bodies. So you see, many times people say, "Oh, I don't remember, what I did in my previous life, so I should not be punishable for what I did." No, there is no such thing at all. So here, a beautiful analogy of the sun is given, right? So Krishna is so merciful, he travels with all living entities and all bodies, and he does not want to leave us helpless. See how merciful he is. So that itself gives us an idea that he is very keen on bringing us back to him in the spiritual world. So here, what do we see? That he will, of course, even though he is merciful, he will not leave us, but he will not force us. He will not force us to become conscious of him. He will not force us to perform devotional service. No. Prabhupada comments on the Upanishads like about two birds on a tree. We learned about this in Bhagavad Gita in one of the purports. Srila Prabhupada talks about that. And he says that, excuse me, imagine there are two birds sitting on a tree. The tree is green, two parrots are green. One parrot is eating the fruits of the tree, and the other parrot is just watching this bird eating the fruits. That is what it is. One is enjoying the fruits while the other one is just watching. So, as soon as this bird that is trying to enjoy gives up that enjoyment propensity and turns towards the other bird that is watching, right? Then immediately Prabhupada says one person becomes free from bodily concept of life, which means if we follow this process, then we will be able to free ourselves from this bodily concept. Then we will free ourselves from the clutches of Maya. We should not think that I am not in Maya. That is a very dangerous situation, very, very dangerous situation that we think that I am not in Maya. No, we have to be, Prabhupada says, we have to be very, very vigilant. Keep our eyes and ears open to see that we do not get attracted to Maya somehow. So once one becomes free of designations, then comes out of this bodily concept, then one is not worried about designations, that, oh, I am this, I'm that, I'm big, I'm small, I'm white, I'm black, I'm man, I'm woman, I'm CEO, I'm clerk. No, no designations at all. Then one becomes qualified to go back to Godhead. So if somehow or the other we take up Krishna consciousness seriously, if we do not take it up seriously, then we will get kind of locked in a cage. What is the spelling of cage? C-A-G-E. C stands for criticizing. A stands for anger. G stands for gossiping. And E stands for envy. We will get completely bound up by this cage. If we don't take up Krishna consciousness seriously, we will start criticizing devotees. We will start getting angry at devotees. We'll start gossiping about devotees, all because of why? Because we are envious of some devotees. We have to be very, very careful. Krishna is not responsible, for fulfilling our desires, as Prabhupada says in the purport. We desire, and Krishna is just sanctioning based on our past karma. So based on my past actions, I will only get X amount of reactions, nothing more or nothing less. But if we somehow or the other follow the teachings of Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna talks about a karma, where we perform our duties following the scriptures, but do not desire to enjoy the fruits of our activities, then what will happen? Then we will remain karma free. Then we will be able to qualify ourselves to go back to the spiritual world, and we will become also free from enjoying propensity, sense gratification. I want this, I want to enjoy this, tongue wants to eat this, ears want to hear this, eyes want to see this. All that will not bother us, all that will not trouble us. Yeah, we may not remember our past deeds, like Prabhupada is saying, but that doesn't mean karma is not going to work. Yes, we may have forgotten, right? We may have forgotten what we have done, but we cannot escape karma unless we surrender to Krishna completely. Unless we do that, there is no way we can come out of this cycle of birth and death, right? What does surrender mean? Surrender means following the instructions of Guru and Krishna. It's simple as that. So in these few verses of Chaitanya Charitamrita, we can see the importance of understanding who is Krishna. Understand the three aspects of his three aspects of understanding him: Brahman, Paramatma, Bhagwan. These three realizations. And from these few verses also we understood that it's important to become serious in spiritual life. It should not be casual at all. It should not be that we take up Krishna consciousness on weekends, or whenever we have time, or a little time in the morning, and then you know forget about it. No, it has to be constant, right? Satatam kirtayanto mam. We have to keep constantly chanting. Yeah, Dhruda Vritaha, with determination, then we will be able to achieve our goal in life, the ultimate goal. So I'm going to stop here. Hare Krishna.